I'm really excited about today's show. My guest, Bill Prenatt, is not only a dear friend, he has 40 years of business and is the owner of Simply Successful along with his lovely wife, Ann. Bill, I'm so glad to have you here today so that you can share your wisdom with our audience.
Kathy, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Well, I know this is going to be fun. So, one of the largest areas I feel like is a large challenge for small business owners is sales. Mm. And, we struggle with the anticipation and overcoming resistance in the sales process. Are we really a salesperson, or, I just help people. I'm not really a salesperson, and all that kind of stuff that goes around sales. So, how can we anticipate resistance, and avoid missing the sales that we probably sometimes do?
Well, it's a great question. So, Kathy, I think that we frequently put too much pressure on ourselves. There's a lot of books that have been written about sales, and I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we're probably pretty authentic, and if we can just stay authentically ourselves, we'll do pretty well. The question about resistance, though, is a little bit different. I find that when it comes to resistance, and if you think about this in your own life, we tend to talk a lot when people disagree with us. If someone says, oh, Kathy, you should do it this way or you should do it this way, rather than being curious and saying, oh, that's interesting that you would feel that way, let's talk about it, we do tend to want to explain to people what they don't understand about the resistance, right? Which is probably exactly the wrong thing to do. And when I was doing my sales training, we used to call it talking and telling, so all too often, we do too much talking and telling rather than engaging people in a conversation about why they disagree with us. I don't know if that comes close to hitting the mark for what you were thinking.
Oh, I agree with you so much. And I think that, for me, and I think a lot of it is nerves and being unsure of ourselves or not having the confidence sometimes that we need, that we go into that, okay, let me explain more mode.
Oh, yeah, really. I think we all need kind of an injection from Dale Furtwängler occasionally.
Yes.
My confidence injection.
Yes. And I seen Dale yesterday and we were talking about that thing about confidence.
Yes.
So how do we recognize resistance when it happens to us? How can we recognize that?
Well, I go into every conversation with the idea in mind, whether it be with Ann or with you or whoever, that more than likely there's going to be a conversation around influence and, how we would like to influence someone. So it's really on the top of my mind. I'm always thinking that it's going to be there. And so I'm not taken off guard. And frankly, I look forward to it because usually when there's an engaging conversation around a topic, usually good stuff comes from it, right? And what I have found is that I'm not nearly as smart as I think I am, and that most of my wins come out of what other people have to say, not what I have to say, right?
Oh, I definitely would have to agree with you. And, when you started in the beginning and you were talking about authenticity, I think that's a huge part of it, because when we can be ourselves, then things happen naturally versus trying to force things.
Yeah, that is right on. That is totally 100% right on. If you think of this, the times when you have the most fun, it's usually around the times when you're low key, you're just not in a high, I got to get this done kind of mode. And usually that's when we're most productive. And I know you're all about that. So, right?
Yeah.
But I think, Kathy, the one thing that I would like to make sure that your listeners pick up on is this, and that is that we do tend to communicate in a random way. And I feel that if we could just use a couple of routine things that allow us to kind of channel our discussions in a way that are more productive, we'll generally have a much better success with our discussions.
So can you share a little bit more about that? Because I definitely think, the good communication is, the key part of all of this.
Well, in my head, when I'm engaging in a conversation, if I see that there's going to be anticipate some resistance, I start thinking about a strategy that I used to use and frankly learned from my employer called APART, A-P-A-R-T. And so that's kind of what goes into my head. Okay, you need to start thinking about the APART strategy. And so the APART strategy is pretty straightforward. And so when I feel that there's resistance, Kathy, the first thing I'm going to do is to try to ask a question around the resistance, right? Because I want you to feel, if I feel that we're engaging in that I'm listening and that I understand your concerns. Without that, most conversations go sideways. Right.
Well, of course, I would definitely say that because, so many people seem, not so many, but, a lot of times you're in this situation where you think there's this engagement, but people aren't that engaged with what are listening or being, in that communicative spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people go into these conversations thinking they have to win and therefore the other person has to lose. Right. And right.
Good point.
Yeah. And so, to me, if I have a conversation with you and it doesn't leave in a positive way, that's not a win. I might have gotten my way, but it's not really a win. And so I feel that the relationship that we have is more important than me extracting something from you that you don't agree with or that I need to convince you of.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit more about the APART system?
So after we have a discussion, and it really is a discussion, it's you pose your point of view, I ask you questions, you ask me questions. Usually it's a couple of questions, 2 or 3 back and forth. I'm probably going to paraphrase what I thought I heard from you because frequently our minds play little games on us. And so we think we hear what somebody's saying, but we always don't know for sure. So if I paraphrase back to you where I think you're at on this, more than likely we'll get on the same page, which is really, I'm not going to embark on trying to convince you of something until we're both thinking along the same lines. And so using paraphrasing as a tool in that process is an important part of the whole discussion.
Okay. So we've got asking questions and then paraphrasing.
Yes. So again, this all happens very spontaneously, right? Right now,
right.
We're kind of talking about it in slow motion, but
right.
But the more you practice this, the easier it becomes, right? And to me, I can't imagine doing it any other way now, because I've been doing it for so many years. But then it's time to respond with some benefits that matter to the other person. So this is another area where we tend to go wrong, where I try to convince you that you should see it my way because of how it's good for me. Honestly, I think most of us are interested in what's good for our own selves. And so I've got to be able to show you what's in it for you, not what's in it for me. And that comes after the getting on the same page and then trying to give you some benefits as opposed to features about why it might be in your best interest.
That's an interesting, that you say that about the benefits, because I think so many people tend to go hit the features before they hit the benefits.
Yeah, that was part of our training. We used to have a really cool thing where we would just go through all of this training and then we would have the salespeople go, okay, now tell us about the benefits here. And they would run right down through all the features. I don't know why I'm not sure why we're hardwired that way. But I guess it's a lot easier, and we think it's more profound if we talk about features. But and here's the thing: if you really listen intently to like radio stations or TV stations, you'll hear them talking in benefits all the time. They do not talk in features; they talk in it's all benefits. So they're highly trained in how to do that. We can learn the same thing ourselves, I think.
Yeah, I know I think it's easier for us to say, okay, well, this, and this, but when we really talk about the benefits, we're really talking more about the outcomes and the emotional attachment, don't you
Yeah,
think, to those outcomes?
totally, totally. Yeah, one of the my beliefs is that people make a decision based on emotion, and then they go about justifying it with the facts. So, if you don't connect emotionally, you're probably not going to have a very positive outcome,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So we talked about asking questions and paraphrasing and responding, and the T would stand for.
So once we've gotten to this point, I'm going to now do a little test for the reaction that you might have in this whole conversation, right? So then I need to come back and not assume that we're on the same page. So now I need to bring my curiosity back. And so I'm going to ask you another question or two just to see, because frequently we think that we're on the same wavelength, but even after all that conversation, we're really talking apples and oranges. So with a simple question or two, I'm going to see whether or not we're on the same page. And then we're going to make sure that we have a next step to what we've just discussed so that, we're not just leaving it hanging out there. I don't know if you've been in conversations like that are just spectacular conversations, but then we leave it out there. We're like, okay, yeah, nothing ever really is going to happen as a result of it. So that next step is then critical.
Well, it's so true that we really need that affirmation or that confirmation, I
Yeah,
guess would
yeah.
be the word, because we all think differently and we all come from different places from our history and our backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes, even though we think we're on the same wavelength,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
not.
Oh,
We're not.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is kind of a simple way of looking at it, Kathy. But as you, we are both big believers in people, right? I mean, we believe in people. It's in our heart. You have to wonder, though, if people are so great, why often are there so many disagreements, right? Why are communications so poor? It's just primarily because we're not doing things in a systematic way, right? And we're not using systems. And so even though people have good hearts, they still need to use a systematic way of communicating.
So let me ask you, what role does trust play in all of this?
Oh, huge, huge. If you haven't established trust with someone, you've not earned the right to have a tough discussion with them, right?
Great point.
Yeah, I mean it's not, and trust is everything. And as you and I both know, we worked together for so many years. I think there's no way I would ever not trust something that you say to me or something that you do, because we've seen that in each other over such a long period of time. But if you haven't established trust with someone, you shouldn't expect that things are going to go well. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So trust is the foundation of good communications.
So authentic and being trustworthy.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks for
Right.
bringing that out. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you've been in business for many, many years, and I know you've been a small business owner for quite a while, and you work with family-owned small businesses.
Yes.
So, what do you think? Is there a largest challenge that you find with a client or with yourself? And how do you feel like you can get around that? Is it sales? Is it something else for you?
Well, one of the reasons why I love to work with small business owners is because they are really stuck in random. They are, as you know, because you've worked with them for a number of years as well, they are so caught up in random. And I love to get them to slow down and bring the best out of them, the real potential out of them once they slow down. I mean, isn't that fun when you see that in your clients?
Yeah, getting them to get off that kind of, well, I call it the hamster wheel, and it's not only that,
Yeah.
it's just to, we're in this to enjoy what we're doing. It's
Yeah.
not all about everything else, but we get on that pace that we got to do more, got to be better, got to do all this stuff. And we're not really going through a good, enjoyable process.
Yeah. One of the statements, and I think things come to you like they come to me. one of the things that I thought about the other day is, just because you're the fastest person in the race doesn't mean you're going to win, especially if you're not in the right race, right?
Or you stumble.
Or you fall, you trip, right? Yeah. And so speed is important, but, pacing yourself, making sure that you've thought things through, that you have a plan, that you organize. And by and large, small business owners think that they can just speed it up faster, so when things aren't going well, they just go faster and talk louder, which, tends to defeat the purpose.
Right.
Right.
I'd like to kind of just go off, and I don't want to catch you off guard, but I just kind of want to go off a little bit and just ask you if, you're the founder of E4E, which is Experts for Entrepreneurs. Can you kind of just tell the audience a little bit about how this came about and what the group's about?
Well, how it came about, Kathy, is a fun story because for 2 years after I left corporate America, I stumbled around trying to figure out what to do, and it was hopeless because I kept going to networking meetings, people passing out business cards, no relationships being built, no trust being built, and I thought there has to be a better way. I mean, I can't continue doing this. So actually, out of frustration, I think is probably how E4E was founded. Today, Experts for Entrepreneurs is my marketing. I don't really have a marketing fund. All of my time, all of the commitments that I make as E4E, because I've got relationships with 25 people that I know, like, and trust, that we believe in each other. What else do I need to do? And so E4E is my marketing, and I am so committed to education. I believe that we have to always be sharpening our saw. And so that's really what we focus on, is just trying to take 2 or 3 hours out of every entrepreneur's month and give them 2 or 3 good ideas that they can focus on to improve their business. And it's more complicated than that, but not really.
Right. Well, I know I've been thoroughly, enjoyed being a part of that group and taken so much back away from it. And I'm glad you kind of shared a little bit about the group with us. So before we wind up here, is there one bit of advice that you would like to tell our audiences?
Wow. That's a tough one.
Just one.
That's the tough part. It's the just one.
Right.
I think that not getting so caught up in ourselves and relying on the fact that there's a bigger plan here, and that no matter how hard we try, that we need to follow the bigger plan, and that we shouldn't get caught up in our own egos. And when I get in my biggest jam is when I start thinking that I'm smarter than I really am, and I stop relying on other people and I stop relying on the bigger plan. So I think that would be my one thing, is just stay humble and remember whose plan it really is.
And ask for help, right?
Always ask for help. Yes.
So why don't you tell the audience of how they could get in touch with you if they wanted to, or maybe even tell them how they can find out more about E4E.
Yeah. So I would love it. I would love it for people they can be your guest or my guest. They can come to Experts for Entrepreneurs. It's on the 3rd Wednesday of every month. It's at the Business Lodge in Chesterfield Mall in Karen Hoffman's Business Lodge. And they can go to e4ecommunity.com and they'll find us there. Or they can just send me an email at bill.prenatt@simplysuccessful-llc.com. And I'd be glad to invite them to one of our meetings. So
Great.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Right. Well, thank you, Bill, so much for sharing your wisdom, and I can't wait to have you back on.
Kathy, thank you. It's my pleasure. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.